Our reading this morning is from Beth Lefevre, entitled, We Are Whole. We are whole, even in the broken places, even where it hurts. We are whole, even in the broken places, the places where fear impedes our full engagement in life, where self-doubt corrupts our self-love, where shame makes our faces hot and our souls cold. We are whole even in those places where perfectionism blunts the joy of full immersion into person, place, activity, where good enough does not reside except in our silent longings, where our gaps must be filled with substance, accomplishment, and frenzied activity lest they gape open in disgust. We are whole, where we would doubt our own goodness, richness, fullness, in depth, where we would doubt our own significance and our own profoundness. We are whole even in our fragility, even where we feel fragmented, alone, insubstantial, insufficient. We are whole even when we are in process, even as we stumble, even as we pick ourselves up again. For we are whole. We are whole.
We are whole. I plan to speak with you this morning about missing pieces. That's the title of this sermon. And during our planning, Steve selected and shared the reading he just offered with you. As is the case often in preparing for worship, I read through something once and have a particular reaction to it. I then set it aside and come back to it again and again, listening for deeper meaning, opening to new feelings and responses to the words on the page. Beth Lefevre's words seemed almost antithetical to what I had in mind for today's sermon. My first reaction was, no, this won't do. I'm going in another direction. And I'm glad I didn't write you back, Steve, to say that. Once I came back to her words, after they percolated for a while in my mind, I found that in them something I had completely missed the first time around. I was looking for that arc in the circle. You know those computer graphics where there's a colored circle with one little section, one little arc that's sort of pulled out. It's pulled apart, but it's like hovering right there, so you can tell that it goes in the whole circle. Sometimes it's used to graph certain data or show the amount of the whole that one little piece represents. Do y'all know what I'm talking about? Okay, good, yes. That was the first image that came to my mind in preparing for this sermon. But this reading is actually about the entire circle, not just that little arc section. I had been reading about and preparing notes for this sermon about missing pieces, about searching for those arcs that you can't see, those ones that are absent or lost or missing. And my focus was so dialed in on this one notion that I wasn't even acknowledging the broader picture, that whole circle. How often do we do this in our everyday lives? Get caught up in the details and miss the bigger picture. Our theme for April is wholeness, after all. And this reading that Steve carefully selected based on his enlightened view of my proposed topic is actually perfect for talking about wholeness. So thank you, Steve. Author Shel Silverstein wrote the story of The Missing Piece, a children's tale in which a circle entity goes in search of its missing piece, a small wedge that when they eventually come together, form a perfect circle. The story goes like this: the circle searches high and low, all the while singing about its missing piece. It goes on this grand adventure, meeting all kinds of pieces along the way before finding the one that fits. Once these two are united in one, the circle finds out it can't sing like it used to. Now, there's a lot in this story, and those of you who read it, probably know there's much I'm kind of leaving out here, but one of the takeaways ends up being that the circle finds out that something very valuable is lost when there's no gap in its edges. Despite finding its perfect fit with the right-sized wedge, the circle ultimately decides to leave it behind and continue searching. It's a beautiful illustration of life being about the journey and not the destination. The quest brings fulfillment, not necessarily the attainment of the object. Now, how many scientists do we have in the room? Anybody here consider? Okay, I get a couple hands. How about mathematicians? Yeah, I see another one. Okay, great. How many of you like to figure things out, to solve problems, find answers to questions? Oh, you're waving. Yes, right here. Love it. I am a jigsaw puzzler myself. And boy, howdy, how I love to find the next piece in my puzzle and then place it in its proper position, forming the overall picture. There's a sense of satisfaction in finding answers and solving problems, a sense of completion, a sense of fullness or wholeness in a way. That's definitely true with a jigsaw puzzle. When all the pieces are together, the picture is whole and it's complete. But is that sense of completion something that actually feeds us? Is it something we strive for and want for our lives? I bet the answer sometimes is yes and sometimes is no. What about in your search for truth and meaning? Have you arrived at your sought-after destination? Do you have answers to all of your questions? Is your understanding of mystery complete? Think about that question for a second. Do you want it to be? Or might it be in the act of questioning, in the process of seeking, in the quest for deeper truth, in that searching, that striving, that looking for the missing pieces? Maybe that's where we experience wholeness, where we perceive the arc in relation to the full circle. And I suspect that our understanding of wholeness may include a variety of definitions and descriptions. But I also think this idea that the whole includes what we consider missing pieces can be true also. There's a psychological concept called the Johari window, created by Joseph Luft and Harrington Ingram in 1955. The Johari window is a technique that helps people better understand their relationship with themselves and with others. It consists of 4 areas relating to what we do and do not know about ourselves, and what other people do and do not know about us. It's often used in business trainings and team building exercises, things like this. I learned about it in a psycho-spiritual development class in seminary. The Johari window can also be applied to our spiritual selves as well, to our understanding of divine mystery. When you came in this morning, you had a piece of paper tucked neatly into your order of service, and you were offered a pen, I hope. If you would pull those out now, if you don't have one, will you please raise your hand and maybe I could call on Denise to hand one out? Can you bring one up front for Mike, please? Just like the children, I'm going to make you all work today. On your piece of paper, and you might want to use your hymnal as something hard to write on, or if you have a book with you, I want you to draw a line down the center of the page, and then draw another line straight across the center. So it's going to be like a big cross, and you're going to have 4 sections when you're done. So one line down the center and one line across the center. I guess I could have done that for you to see, but I didn't. So you should have 4 boxes now. This is your window with 4 panes of glass. All right? Now that you have your window ready, we're going to label each of these quadrants. In the top left, the first, I want you to label that one, everyone knows. Everyone knows. In the top right, right beside it, I want you to write, I know. And then if we go to the bottom left, in that one it's going to be others know. And our final box on the bottom right will be unknown. Now the idea of the Johari window is that this entire window represents you. Each pane represents a different aspect of your knowing of self. The first area is often described as open. It includes what you know about yourself and what other people know about you. The second one includes those things that you know about yourself, but that other people don't know about you. The third, down here in the bottom, the third includes what other people know about you, but that you aren't aware of about yourself. And then the fourth quadrant, the unknown. This is what is not yet known. This is your own unknowing. The fourth pane could be described as your missing parts, those things that are unknown to you and to others. These are missing parts in that you are not consciously aware of them, but they are part of the whole. Your unknowing doesn't make them not exist, does not be a part of who you are. That's why there's a window pane for them. This whole paper represents you. Now at this time, I'm going to ask you to take a few minutes to write down aspects of yourself in your window. I'm going to add another dimension to it though too. In particular, I want you to think about what you believe, your faith, the spirituality that speaks to you, and fill in your window panes with this in mind. What do you know about divine mystery? What might mystery know about you? What is yet to be known? Ultimate mystery. These are for you alone, and I won't ask you to share them today. So I'm going to play just a little bit of music and give you some time to fill in your boxes. How was this exercise for you? I see a couple people still writing. Hard. I see a thumbs up. Did you learn something about yourself? Perhaps once you've had a time to sit with this for a while, let it percolate and come back to it again, and then again. Maybe add more, change things. That section of unknown, there are questions therein for which you don't yet have answers. There is wisdom and insight within those missing parts. And perhaps the beauty is in the discovery. Perhaps the missing pieces are what draw us to keep questioning, to keep seeking, to continue our search into the depths of the unknown. And when we find new things about ourselves, when we discover new insights into the divinity within us and in all things, those lines we drew on our paper move. These window panes change size and shape. Now, of course, I'm leaving a lot of nuance out of this and a lot of the in-depth psychological implications of the Johari window. You can research it for yourself. It's actually really quite interesting. What's important is the overall concept, the whole, if you will. I want you to hold your paper out in front of you. Give it some distance. You can hold it at arm's length and look at it from afar. Notice the amount of words you've written in each section. And imagine, if you can, moving your dividing lines to more evenly space out what's written and what's left blank. Would your window panes look a little differently shaped? Probably. It's the nature of the questions here, right? Perhaps your top left pane would be huge. Maybe one pane would be a long rectangle. How large is your unknown part? What measurements are you using to determine where to redraw your lines? If you're like me, I'd want to give equal space to each pane for ink and blank paper. Make it spatially pleasing to my symmetry-loving brain. But that would likely shrink my unknown box far too small. What if you calculated the size of your panes based on the space itself and not what is already filling that space? I'm going to ask that again. What if you calculated the size of your panes based on the space itself and not what is already filling that space? Or maybe, what if both the space and what's filling it are the complete whole? Those missing pieces aren't really something that is missing or incomplete. Their absence is part of what makes the window a whole window. All of you. In my Jenga house demonstration with the children earlier, that went perfectly, by the way, the missing green piece was actually part of the house all along. We just couldn't see it right away. The kids looked all around that little structure and saw the other colors sticking out. But the absence is part of what makes the window whole. That piece was in there. It was just buried on the bottom, and you couldn't see it from looking at it. Upon further inspection, and when it fell to the ground, we found it in the foundation. So what kinds of truths, what wisdom do we find in our seeking when we're looking for what appears to be missing? And if we're discovering truth, is anything really missing at all? There's another philosophical concept called the holon, or the holon, I've heard it said, but I think that's somebody wishful thinking there. The holon is something that is simultaneously a whole and a part of that whole. It's both a piece of and the whole itself. It reminds me of my little arc, but when it's placed in the actual circle. One way to think about this is that when we talk about the divine, when we talk about mystery, what we don't know, we're talking about ourselves and all other manifestations of what is divine. We're interlinked. Christian contemplative Richard Rohr writes, "We see that the part contains the whole, or replicates the whole, and yet each part still has a wholeness within itself. This appreciative accumulation is what makes any whole whole. Each of us replicates the whole and yet has a certain wholeness within ourselves. but we are never entirely whole apart from connection with the larger whole. Each being is both a part that is like the whole, and yet also contributes to the whole. Sounds a lot like our seventh principle, the interconnected web of which we are a part. Whole, but not separate from connection with that larger whole. Put another way, the missing pieces, or what we perceive of as missing pieces, might always and ever be present in that whole. We may find many things in the first three panes of glass in our drawing, but the fourth pane completes the window. All of it makes the whole. Unitarian Universalist Paula Goldade named the wholeness of love for all beings and for herself, saying, "There is no crevice inside me that love cannot touch." You are whole. We are whole, even in the broken places where we would doubt. We are whole in the process, stumbling and picking ourselves up again and again and again. We are whole. Amen, and blessed be.
We will release our flame today with words from Andrew Pacula. There are miles behind you and many more ahead. As you journey on toward wholeness, may all that is good and true guide your way. May the joy of love lighten you every step, and the miracle that is life be ever in your sight.